Yo, let's go, and welcome to the video. This is going to talk about Languish, which is our tier 10 4-piece set bonus, and how it kind of interacts. So I made a little spreadsheet, and what I did was I went back to a fight where it was just me. It was in a 10-man, so there wasn't another boomkin in the raid, because Languish is bugged with more than one boomkin if they both have tier 10 4-piece. We'll get into that later. But I went through and filtered by Wrath and then Starfire, noted when I got the crits from those, and then also noted when I got Languish to tick. So here's the first minute or so of that fight on the left over here. I had a Wrath crit for 8,679. So to find the 7%, you can just take this number if you wanted to figure out some of your numbers. It's very simple. You just multiply your number by 0.07, and that's how much that crit will add to Languish. And since Languish ticks 2 times, it's going to have half of that damage per tick. So I got 2 crits and then didn't crit for the next 2 seconds. So my first tick of Languish was for 709. So half of each of the 7% of the first 2 crits, which leaves another 709 damage that hasn't ticked yet. But that 709 gets added in to the next set of crits until finally I don't crit for 2 seconds again, and then that bunch of spells will have its first tick. So if you don't crit for 4 seconds, then both ticks will happen. It'll be the same number. Languish falls off, and then you start back over. The way it works here, though, when only 1 tick of Languish goes out, is you can add up all of these other green numbers, which is just over 7,000. So it's taking half of that remaining Languish tick from the first set of crits and splitting that with the next 2 ticks from the next batch. So half of 709 is 354.5. If I add that in there, then we've got our damage amount for my second tick of Languish in the fight. Let me crouch down here. We've got the same thing for this next set. If I added 451, 497, and half of 7,361, I would get 4629 for the third tick. And then if another 2 seconds were to elapse, I'd get the other 4629 and Languish resets. Now over here, I've got an example of a fight where myself and our other main boomkin both had 4-piece tier 10 and how that interacted with Languish. And if you see here, I've got some ticks from Languish, and then Adelaide has some, and we kind of go back and forth a little bit. And how it determines who gets the tick is who had the last crit before neither of us crit for 2 seconds. Let's take a look at this first tick of Languish for 8205 and see how I got that. So this is the very start of the fight. These are only crits from Wrath and Starfire again, but for the both of us. So there's only going to be 1 Languish debuff up on the boss for this entire time. And if we add up just the Languish that I was supposed to get, then it equals that amount of damage. So I'm not gaining the Languish from Adelaide's crits. I'm only benefiting from mine. So then a couple more crits, half of the 8205. I might have had another crit or 2. And that means Adelaide wouldn't have crit for that 2 seconds again. So I got another tick. About 8 seconds later, I had Languish tick number 3, and then 47 seconds into the fight, all of that Languish that Adelaide had been building up finally got to come out and hit the boss. But where we could lose damage is if this situation is at the end of the fight and Adelaide never gets to let Languish tick even once, let alone twice, then all of Adelaide's damage just won't count. But as long as we kind of alternate, which we have no control over really, who's getting that last crit before Languish can finally tick, then it won't be too much of an issue. But that's too much RNG, and I think it should be fixed. And this was on Lich King, which has multiple phases, and I noticed something else that seemed kind of weird. So Adelaide had the last tick of Languish on the Lich King before we entered phase 2. And even though Languish fell off of the boss, the debuff, because she got both of her ticks, my Languish somehow stored itself in the nether around us. Once we were able to attack the Lich King again, and I was the last to crit, so I got credit for the Languish. That stored Languish from phase 1 came out onto the boss. Really, really strange how that kind of interacts there. I'm fairly certain this is not how Languish is supposed to interact. My Languish should be from my Languish, Adelaide should be from hers, and we should both be able to have Languish tick and do damage for ourselves. And one more thing to point out at the end of the video here. This is from a 10-man where I was by myself as far as being the only boomkin in the raid. Sarfang was a 3-minute 27-second fight. My last tick of Languish was at 3 minutes 18 seconds. I was in Lunar at the end of the fight, and you can see here at 319, 321, 322, these last 6 Starfires crit, and none of that Languish got to actually hit the boss. So the tier set bonus had absolutely no value during that last part. And for some reason, if I had a longer string of crits without a 2-second gap for Languish to tick, then that's a lot of damage that I'd just be missing out on. Is there a way to change that, to fix it, to make it interact a little bit better? Maybe, but with us being so low on the overall damage ranking, I would like to hope so. If this does get fixed and updated or changed at all, I'll let you guys know. But until then, good luck in ICC.